Hello and welcome to SweetSpotDFS. This is a DFS strategy video for the 2021 CJ Cup at Shadow Creek. Now typically I would have had a course fit and stat fit video for you guys prior to this one, but I did not do those this week, primarily because we're at a new golf course. So the CJ Cup is usually played in South Korea. We are now in Las Vegas. So it didn't really make sense to do a course fit video because we really don't have course history, and it's a limited field, so I didn't really think we needed to really do a stat fit video. So anyways, I'm going to do all of those pieces here in this video, and I'm going to try to shorten those parts up as well as strategy videos, so this video doesn't get that long. But I do have timestamps in the description, so you can get to any part of the video that strikes your fancy, whatever you find interesting or important. It is there in the description. But I also have chapter mode enabled, so you can go ahead and drag your mouse or finger over the screen. You're going to see in the red bar, it's split up into segments that give you the titles of each of those segments. So you can get to any part. Those are the timestamps. Okay, let's go ahead and get right into the spreadsheets. Not the spreadsheet, the tournament fact sheet. I usually start all the course fit videos right here. End up looking at the golf course and then kind of the attributes or the statistics that come with the golf course. So we are at Shadow Creek, which is in North Las Vegas. It is a par 72, 7,500 yards. The stimp meter is running at a 12, which is pretty much tour average. I've heard that these greens are very undulating. They're very reminiscent of the Masters at Augusta. So I don't know how much that's true, but if there's a lot of undulation, 12 is actually a fast speed. I mean, it's going to make uphill putts a little bit slower, which can confuse some players, and downhill putts obviously a little faster. When we look at green size, I can't remember, but I think tour average is around 6,000 square feet. I could be wrong. Maybe it's 5,500, but I feel like these are just slightly below. So it's going to, accuracy into the greens is going to matter, but really hitting the green gives you a good opportunity to make birdie. They're not the biggest greens, so if you find yourself, way over on the edge of the green and you might be faced with a 90-foot putt, I don't think you're going to have that here. And really, I don't think 3-putt avoidance is something to worry about here. We have 9 holes where water is in play. If there was a stat to look at how many or what the percentage of finding penalties in a round, that might be worth it. It might be worth looking at that. A lot of the par 5s are guarded by water, where if you're trying to take it on in 2, you're going to have to somehow maneuver a shot around the water. So most of, I think, the water holes are on the par 5s. There are a couple par 3s that also have water. I don't really know how much those are in play. But either way, water might be an issue at this golf course. We are on bent grass greens and then Bermuda tees, fairways, and rough, which is exactly the same as we saw last week at the Shriners Hospitals for Children Open, at TPC Summerlin. So the golfers that played there, I think, are going to have very similar conditions at this golf course. It is a Tom Fazio golf course, which I personally don't know what his signature is when he creates golf courses. Donald Ross has the sloping greens from back to front. Pete Dye has the visual sight lines as well as the railroad ties, just to mess, not so much to mess with you. The railroad ties are more for aesthetic, but that Pete Dye makes golf courses tricky. I really don't know what Tom Fazio does. So I think it is very advantageous to look at any tournament results with Tom Fazio designed golf courses and use those to your advantage. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the spreadsheet now. And usually on the course fit videos, we go from tournament fact sheet to basically my own observation of the golf course. What you see in front of you, and I would highly recommend screenshotting or pausing this and reading it. I'm not going to go over every hole. What this is designed to do is to look at off the tee shot shapes and then approach shot shapes. So basically, what shot shape is important off of the tee, and then what shot shape is important into the green. And as I see it, I end up adding that information right here. What's really interesting is the par fives primarily have a draw into the green that's required. There's one that doesn't. That would be hole 16. But for the most part, hitting a draw into the green, at least if you're trying to go for two, is going to be very advantageous. Now, this is for right-handed golfers. I always put this data here as if you were a right-handed golfer. So just flip them for left-handed golfers. Where you see draw, you put fade. Where you see fade, you put draw. Now, when we look at it that way and we look at the par fives, that means lefties who fade the golf ball are going to have an advantage here, which just screams Bubba Watson. I mean, Bubba Watson on these greens with all the undulation, you know, if it's supposed to be reminiscent of the Masters, and hitting big old banana cuts into these greens, I think Bubba has the advantage on the par fives at least. I think this is going to be a great golf course for him because the sight lines are also very target golf, where they're going to be shoots of trees that you're going to want to get through. Not really shoots, but each course is very carved out, basically. So I think it could do pretty well with Bubba, especially when you need to be hitting fades for him into those par fives. I then end up doing a little tally here at the bottom, which just goes to show which shot shape is more important. Off the tee draws, we have 3. Off the tee fades, we have 5. Approach draws, so into the green, we have 5, and fades, we have 6. And then where it doesn't matter, we have 6 off the tee and 7 approach. Where it doesn't matter, the rule of thumb is always go with golfers who fade the golf ball. Fading a golf ball adds more control, adds more backspin. It's just a better scoring shot shape. Sure, draws look pretty and they go further, but fades are more controllable and add more backspin. So really finding scorers that fade the golf ball is going to be highly recommended. Okay. Now, I would typically talk about course history after looking at the course profile, but this golf course is being played at Shadow Creek. We are typically at 9 Bridges on the Jeju Islands in South Korea. We're not there. So looking at course history is kind of, it's really not something we should be doing. We could think of this as tournament history, but I also I just don't feel comfortable, using this as anything more than maybe a tiebreaker when it comes to choosing players. You can see Cameron Smith is at the top. If this was in Jeju Island, he would be a fantastic play. Now, we're in Las Vegas. I'm not positive, we want to be looking at any of this information as anything important. I guess you could make the argument that if strength of field is similar, that this actually isn't terrible, because this is more of a analysis of how these golfers do in stronger strength of fields that are limited, because that's basically what this is. It's not really a WGC event, but it's a no-cut event. So really, it might not be a bad thing to look at. However, I'm not going to go through it all. You guys can see what's on the screen. This is your top 20 tournament history. I'm going to just keep course history up there, but it is your tournament history. Okay, so that wraps up really the course fit portion of it. Now, we're missing the grass stats, but we'll get into that when we talk about the rest of the stats. Let's go ahead and go into recent form. So this would be included in the stat fit mod or video typically, but either way, we'll go through this. So in 2020, this tournament was in a different order in the season. If you look, you can see there were 4 or 5 events that were prior to this event. If we go to 2019, we only had 2. You know, you had the Tour Championship, then off, and then we had 2 tournaments before the CJ Cup. The CIMB was actually played, I think, very similar. I think it was another place in South Korea. I know it's an Asian country where that tournament was played. I can't remember off the top of my head. But if you think about it, if you're going to Korea to play in a tournament and you have the opportunity to play in another tournament that's in Korea prior to playing this one, wouldn't you do it? I mean, I would personally. So we see a lot of golfers, you know, if I rank this here, a lot of golfers played the week before. If we went and looked at 2020, we don't see a lot of golfers that played at all. In fact, when we look at this entire column, we only see 4 golfers that played the week before. And that was, again, at the Houston Open. I have SHO as the Shell Houston Open. That was just the old abbreviation I had for it. Ended up just keeping it just because. But this is the Houston Open. So not a lot of golfers went from the Houston Open to Korea. They didn't go from Texas to Korea. However, you do see a lot of golfers that played at the CIMB prior to the CJ Cup. And that was in 2019. 2018, same thing. So what am I getting at with this? I think playing at the Shriners Hospitals for Children Open last week gives golfers in this field who did that an advantage. I think you do want to kind of, I wouldn't say load up, but consider like 3 to 4 golfers. Consider. The other thing I do want to mention too, if I were to go ahead, sort this by CIMB finishes, you're not going to see anything over 70, which means the CIMB was also a no-cut event. If I scroll down here, again, we're not going to see more than 70. If I go to the 2021 and we look at the Shriners Hospitals Open, we see a bunch of missed cuts that are going to be adding to this recent form. I don't think missed cuts are actually a bad thing. Typically when we see missed cuts, it usually within the bucket system ends up being like the 3rd or 2nd ranked bucket most of the time. I think playing last week is going to be very advantageous. So really any of these guys here that did play last week who fade the golf ball, I think actually have a good chance to do well at this tournament. And more on that later. But let me go ahead and do this by salary. When we look each year, I mean, we can still look at the recent form averages. Just keep your eye on the different colors. You know, it doesn't take the best recent form heading into this tournament to do well. Likewise, it doesn't take it. It's not like having the, well, first of all, it doesn't take the best, and it's not hurtful if it's the worst. But you primarily want decent recent form. So you're going to see that here. Green's good. Yellow is, you know, obviously, let's put it this way. Green is good. Yellow's 2nd. Orange is 3rd. It's the colors of stoplight. So the closer we are to green and not towards red, the better the number is. So when you look at, you know, the color coding here, just keep in mind, we want to see green more than anything. But if you were to see, you know, dark red or just light red, it just shows you that don't be afraid of playing those golfers. You know, don't be afraid of playing a golfer that has kind of terrible recent form. You know, 53 doesn't look good. Brian Harmon didn't even have a top 10 or a top 20 finish leading into this tournament. However, he finished 5th. A tie for 5th. Pat Perez, you know, again, he didn't even have a top 40, but he finished 7th at this event. And, you know, for Pat Perez, if he was in this tournament, might not be a bad place since he's from Vegas. So when we look at the 2021 recent form, my only thing that I want to tell you guys is just don't be afraid of playing a terrible recent form golfer. I guess if we were to look at all the recent form here, you can see all the golfers here. Don't be afraid to play some of these guys down here. Now, don't load up on them, but again, don't be afraid to play 1 or 2 of them. But primarily we want to find golfers kind of in this range here. You know, somewhere from the top to about 50. Sure, we can go 59. We can go all the way down to Matt Kuchar. But anyways, that is my thoughts on recent form. Let's go ahead and look at really kind of the stat fit portion of this. We're going to start with the 2020 DK page. And really, I just want you to focus on this column here. We're looking at top 20 stats. So I basically tallied up how many golfers in this field, or I should say how many golfers had stats that were top 20 in this field. And then I tallied them right here. Your winner last year was Justin Thomas. He had 10 top 20 stats. So it's kind of remarkable, and it's something to look at when we look for the 2021 DK page. And then how often do we see 0? You know, we see it once from Kiradech Affy Barnrat. We see just one top 20 stat from Danny Lee. And I guess if I were to open this up, which one was it? It was approach. So maybe your 6K golfer, if you're going to choose one, look at to see if they were top 20 in approach. It might be worth looking at. So anyways, if I sort this by your top 20 stats, you see a pretty wide range of golfers finishing inside the top 20. A lot of it's going to have to depend on their price tag. So obviously Victor Hovland last year at 10.5 obviously did not live up to his price tag. Neither did Sungjae Im. So those, at those prices, not a good thing. I'm trying to find another one, like even Colin Morikawa, that wouldn't be a good price tag for his finish. So when we look at stats, we might have to delineate between some top priced guys and just go with one of them over the other. Either way, I'm not here to kind of harp on that too long. I'm going to go ahead and sort this back by this. From here on forward, what I'm going to do, let's go ahead and hide this information. And we can look at bentgrass stats. This is kind of part of looking at stats in general. So if this is the stat fit portion, here were your overall bentgrass leaders heading into this tournament. Now you do see a lot of top 20 finishes. That would be those highlighted in green. You see the winner who had the 11th best bentgrass stat or stats. You had Hideki here who had the 3rd best, at 10.7. Hideki is a good play this week as well. Because we are also on bentgrass stat or bentgrass greens. But he did play in Vegas last week, and he's here once again. So, I don't know if Hideki's the type that would hit the slots, but I really don't think there's much to worry there. I think he's probably practicing quite a bit, and his ball flight for this golf course just matches nicely. So either way, he had top bentgrass stats last year. Really the only 2-3 that disappointed: Matthew Wolff, Sergio Garcia, and Brooks Koepka. So they kind of disappointed. I'm not going to harp on that too long. Here are your top 2019 bentgrass stats. Pretty much the same golfers that we see overall bent. So take it as you will. I think looking at all bentgrass is going to be a good thing. I think we should. Now, last year, I only grabbed stats from the beginning of the year. I also did that for this year, but 2 huge differences. One is, well, not so much 2, just 1, the US Open. The US Open is going to sway a lot of those stats. So just keep that in mind. I don't know how advantageous it is looking at this, and I'm not going to spend too much time looking at this, but what I want you to do is, as I sort through these columns of stats, pay attention to the finishing positions over here, because you're going to hear a lot of people in the industry talk to you always about finding the best tee to green golfers, finding the best approach golfers. In all reality, when you look at this, it's going to curb your expectations. If we don't see, 5 golfers inside the top 10, the stat is nearly irrelevant, in my opinion. So, tee to green, we have 2 guys that were top 5. We have Hideki and we have Justin Thomas. Corey Connors at 7,800, not terrible. He wasn't in the optimal lineup, and in fact, the optimal lineup are these golfers here with little tick marks. The winning GPP lineup are those that are highlighted in blue. So we only see 2 for your top tee to green golfers. If we look at off the tee, again, we only have 2. Hideki ends up being up there. We only have 2. We have 1 in the optimal lineup and 1 in the GPP winning lineup. We actually have 3 golfers that are inside the top 10. For approach is a little different. Looks like we have, these 12th place finishes are very close, and they're not going to hurt you when you're trying to win a GPP. So approach looks to be a little bit better, but again, these are the stats heading into this tournament, so they're relevant. Now that I think of it. I was thinking to myself, we can't be talking about approach because this isn't the same golf course. But these aren't the stats that happened at the golf course. These are the stats leading into the tournament, provided by the PGA Tour. So when we look at around the green stat, not terrible. Justin Thomas, Hideki Matsuyama. Maybe if we can find some overlap for this year, might be pretty interesting. But you also found a lot of optimal lineups there, or golfers in the optimal lineup, as well as the winning GPP, much like we see here for putting. That's one thing I've noticed. Looking at putting stats, short-term putting stats heading into a tournament is actually pretty advantageous. So maybe that's something we will focus on when we look at the 2021 DK page. Looking at green and reg, that's not terrible. See a bunch of people here at the top, so hey, that might be worth a look. How about proximity? 2 golfers in the optimal, 2 golfers in the GPP winning. Overall, we had 4 golfers inside the top 10, and 6 golfers inside the top 12. So that's not terrible for proximity. Like putting, green and reg, and proximity, those stats were pretty good. Birdie or better, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 golfers inside the top 10. Birdie or better might not be a bad stat to look at this for this tournament as well. So that is kind of this little stat breakdown going through the 2020. Again, we're not really looking for the absolute best tee to green golfers. We're not really looking for the best approach golfers. We do want to find, maybe 1 or 2 that kind of intertwine with those 2, or not those 2 stats, but just with stats in general. And then look at some of our best putters. That would probably be fairly advantageous. So now from here, I'm just going to talk about, this would be your DFS strategy video going from here going forward. So I didn't have a sweet spot number this week. I apologize. I really didn't find anything I could go with. So I'm not going to try to pretend to put a number there. We can just go ahead and ignore that. But let's go ahead and look at our top stat guys. So Matthew Wolff actually comes into this tournament with the most top 20 stats within this field, that is. And then a bunch of them right here, 7 and down. Again, this is for this year. This is just from the beginning of this season. I shouldn't say this year, the beginning of the season. So we're looking at the Safeway Open all the way until present time. So we don't have any, of our top golfers in the world golf ranking that have, a lot of top 20 stats. But we do, a lot of these golfers are world class and they have the most within this field. So I just want to mention that. I think it might be worthwhile to look at some of these 6K or even 7K golfers that find themselves up here with the most stats, top 20 stats coming into this tournament. Primarily because we saw that last year. Really, if they're coming in with good form and hitting their their clubs really well, hitting their putter really well, we want to be targeting those guys. So really, the 6 guys that I've highlighted up here, I don't think are bad plays. Now I wouldn't play all 6 of them. I might not even play I might not even play 3 of them, but I think playing 2, maybe 1, not a bad idea. Okay, so I just want to stay on stats. We will come back to tee time pairings. We already kind of went over tournament history. Not really going to care about recent form. Let's go ahead and actually, I just want to talk about grass stats. We're gonna follow the same course we did for that last spreadsheet. So your best overall bent grass golfers, Jon Rahm. And by the way, the little stat thing that's going across down here at the bottom, this would be your overall bent grass and 2020 bent grass. Now these are just top 5s. You can obviously see the number next to the name and the percent. Those are percentages. Not percentage. Those are averages. Sorry. So you can see right there, 2020 bent average. Xander Schauffele is your top guy. But we are on overall bent grass. So looking at Jon Rahm, Hideki Matsuyama, Rory McIlroy, a lot of the same guys that we would find at the top of any leaderboard, really. Now, all I would say is I wouldn't stick too much on this. I think you can find 3 to 4 golfers inside this top 20 that will finish inside the top 10. So I think it's not a bad thing to look at. And really, I'm going to change that 2 to 4 golfers. I wouldn't have my minimum as 3. I think bent grass is going to be something very important to look at, but most of these golfers have good bent grass stats. I mean, when we look at, so Matt Kuchar would be the 8th best bent grass golfer. If we go from 8th down to the 20th, really 7 points differ between them. That's not enough for me to worry about. In fact, Victor Hovland has a 15% chance of, not chance, but a 15% mark of finishing inside the top 10 at bent grass golf courses. Ian Poulter's better than that. He's at 20, and he has way more events than Victor Hovland. So it's not to say Victor Hovland is, a burner on bent grass golf courses, but obviously his averages so far are a little bit better than Ian Poulter. And really, you can use these percentages to your advantage as well. If we were to look to see who has the best top 10 bent percentage, it's Jon Rahm. So if you're trying to find a golfer who maybe you want a safer, high-priced golfer, Jon Rahm's not a bad play. Rory McIlroy would be second on the list. Now, Justin Thomas is one of my favorite plays. He's actually 12th when it comes to top 10 bent grass, or finishing inside the top 10, the percentage of times he does. Now, this tournament is going to be included in this bent grass percentage. And if you think about it, there are only 70 some positions. So that is also what's baked into these numbers. Your best golfers will just typically always have better bent grass stats. Primarily because they're invited to the limited events or the invitationals that no one else can go to. And if they are no-cut events and there are limited fields, obviously their averages will look better no matter what. So when we see someone down here like a Russell Henley, at 20% making inside the top 10, that's not terrible. That's actually really good. So at 7-1, that's not a terrible play. It would just be coming down to here, and this isn't even to say you shouldn't play any of these golfers either, but finding this is not good. And really, like these golfers here who have more than, say, 10 events under their belt, not finishing inside the top 10, that's not really a good sign. But of course, their price is also reflective of that as well. So obviously, I wouldn't even say tread carefully, but don't get too caught up on bent grass stats, because it it takes a lot of understanding where these numbers are coming from. Like Matt Kuchar is a golfer. Like, look at how many events, look at how often they finish inside the top 10. That will give you a clear picture as to, whether you should play them at their price tag or not. So let's look at the 2020 Bentgrass stats. Xander is your top guy for last year Bentgrass golf courses, followed by Justin Thomas. And Justin Thomas is one of my favorite plays. In fact, both of these guys are part of my favorite plays. I do like Rory. Rory, I think, is a wild card here at this tournament because he does play bentgrass golf courses really well. He does play well on very fast greens. We just don't know what Rory we're going to see. So I actually don't mind Rory. And sneaky enough, I think he has an 8th place finish at US Open. Yeah. I mean, so did Justin Thomas, but still, don't exclude Rory McIlroy from your player pool. Okay, so that's going to wrap up the grass stats. Let me go ahead and just hide all of this information. We can just talk about the regular stats. So I'm going to cruise through these, just kind of showing you who the top guys are in each stat category. Now, remember, tee to green, I'd say 2 to 4 of these guys. I would not get gung-ho on trying to fill your whole lineup with tee to green golfers. That is a terrible strategy. I've heard it being used like, hey, pick a stat and stick to it. If you want to make one lineup, go for it. It's just, it's pointless, honestly. But when you look at this, I would say grab, like I said, 2 to 4 golfers. Maybe, pay attention to the names that we see and see if we can find them on the next page. So obviously, I guess I have my eyes on Justin Thomas, Sungjae Im, Hideki Matsuyama, Rory McIlroy, and Xander. So those are the guys I'm kind of looking at. I want to see if they're going to show up on off the tee. There we go with Sungjae. Believe it or not, off the tee. That's crazy. Oh, of course, Rory off the tee. Where's Xander? I actually don't see Xander. I don't even see Hideki, although I see Hideki right there, but I don't see Hideki when I look at this, for top 20. So I really only see 2. So is it Rory and Sungjae? Is that who I'm really going to go with? Xander was a 2-1. Justin's a 1-1. Yeah, Justin, -0-2. Now, again, this is from the US Open. I forgot to preface that. A lot of these stats come from the US Open, so we have to keep that in mind. But those that didn't, I think, not a terrible play, like going with like a Sungjae Im. Man, where was Xander? What did he have for off the tee? Minus 0.1. Okay. So, I mean, I guess the only ones that we do see that go from one to the other would be Sungjae, as well as... I was just talking about him, wasn't I? I mean, I guess we see Matthew Wolff up there as well. Who was I just talking about? My goodness. Rory. That's who we're talking about off the tee. Rory, of course. And I couldn't see him because for whatever reason, whenever I sort this out, that first line gets hidden. Okay, so approach. Matthew Wolff is up there again. Bubba Watson actually is up there. Bubba Watson, look at Bubba's stats. That is pretty good. With putting like that, man, Bubba's going to be a hard not to play. I want to play Bubba so much. Hideki's up there. We were talking about Russell Henley not too long ago. He might be a good 7-1K player. Sungjae is also up here, so Sungjae is a play that I probably will be on as well. Around the green. Now, around the green, we did see a lot of top 20 finishes at this tournament last year, so it might not be a terrible stat to look at this year. I have Xander and Justin as my top guys. Again, this is all from the US Open, so their around the green stats are going to be good because it was hard to hit the greens there. And these guys are very good golfers, so obviously their around the green is going to be good. We do see Russell Henley once again. I see a Rory spotting down here. But really, those are the only and another Matthew Wolff. So apparently Matthew Wolff just dominates all the stats here. Matthew Wolff is just at the top of all of these stats. However, I'm probably not going to play that much Matthew Wolff, to be honest with you. So we'll see. We'll get through this coming up here. Green and reg. Now, we saw a lot of green and reg when it came to last year's tournament. You know, the top 20 guys having top 20 finishes. You know, guys that kind of stand out to me again: Sung Jae, Ryan Palmer, Russell Henley, even Brendan Steele kind of pops out. The new additions of JT Poston and Robbie Shelton kind of stand out. And then Tom Hoge is another golfer that I like this week. So if you saw my tweet earlier, he was a part of it. So not terrible to look at. Now, looking at proximity, it'd be kind of looking at the same golfers that we were just looking at, trying to find some kind of similarities. So Harry Higgs, I think I saw Taylor Gooch when we flipped over. So I guess we could also just look. What is the lowest numbers? 37.75 and 69.44. So anything that's above 69.44 here, we're going to see in green and reg as well. So really, you see all of these guys. You see all of these ones with those guys. They are interchangeable. So really finding 2 or 3 of these golfers, I think, will be pretty helpful. And again, the one name that really just glaringly shows up is Matthew Wolff. Maybe it's a sucker not playing him, really. And then here are your top birdie or better golfers. So believe it or not, Harry Higgs is at the top of the leaderboard for birdie or better percentage, followed by Andrew Landry. I don't think you probably saw that coming, did you? We see Matthew Wolff, Ryan Palmer. We even see Scotty Scheffler up there. New additions, Robbie Shelton and JT Poston. Brendan Steele, Russell Henley once again. It's good to see someone like Matt Kuchar and Sung Jae up there as well. So, I mean, Sung Jae, if we were just going by stats alone, Sung Jae and Matthew Wolff would just be the greatest pair to play together, honestly. And maybe it's worthwhile in doing that. So let's get into the strategy portion, really. I know talking about stats typically is part of the strategy, but what really is going to win a GPP this week? When we look at every year dating back to the inception of this tournament, when we look at the price tags for each of these golfers and looking at the top 10, one thing that just glaringly shows up is how many 6K golfers we can see up there. Now, in 2018, I only see one here, for 5th place here with Scott Brown. But, actually, I guess there really isn't a but to that. I thought I saw a 6K golfer earlier. Either way, so we have one 6K, a 7.2, and a 7.6. Really, those 3 golfers enable you to use 28,300. So 28,000 for 3 spots. When you average that out, that's over 9K. If we go ahead and we look at 2019, we see 1, 2, 3 golfers that are 6K and better. Or not 6K and better, but at 6K that finish inside the top 10. Now, the optimal lineup, I don't know if this is absolutely correct. The optimal lineup is really how many people I could fit under 50,000. This would be how many golfers I could fit at 50,000 at the top of the leaderboard. I don't have the DK points for this tournament, so I don't know absolutely if this was the optimal lineup. But when it just comes to placement, what I would assume what would be your best golfers, it shows up here. But you easily could have went 3 6K golfers. Can we do something like this? No, that's a little bit too much. How about Cam Smith? That's 49,300 with those 6 guys selected. I'm guessing we want to play Rafael Cabrera-Bello. but perhaps we didn't. This would have been 49,700. These guys without Gary Woodland. So either way, you still would have seen 3 6K golfers in the optimal lineup or close to. When we look at last year's tournament, I mean, Danny Lee really would have came out from nowhere. Kiradech Affy Barnrat was a 6K golfer, and Kevin Streelman. So this is actual optimal lineup because I do have the DK points added up as well. So you would have seen 3 golfers in the 6K range. The other thing to go with that too is looking at all the golfers who finished first. So we have, the first year, 12,100. The second year, 11,200. The third year, 11,700. Now, in comparison to the rest of the field, last year that would have been your highest price guy won the tournament. In 2019, your second highest golfer finished as the winner. And then 2018 would have been the highest price again, once again. So really, I do believe we're going to want to focus on finding, golfers that are above 11K, really to anchor our lineups. Like, I think the winner is going to come from anyone that's over 11K. So really, to me, it's really based off of strategy. What is the best strategy when creating lineups? And then that's how we can attack our player pool, trying to figure out what our player pool is. For me, I think what I want to do is no matter what. So if I were to go to the lineup construction page, which I'm going to keep small, just don't mind that. What I want to do is find my favorite 6K golfers, like right off the hop. And a little bit of this, what we can do is basically look. Trying to see if I want to get into tee times right now. Probably not. Actually, why don't we? A big part of me creating my lineups is looking to see who's paired with whom and seeing if there can be any advantage with it. And it's actually helped me out quite a bit. So let's go ahead and talk about that. And what that's going to also require me to do is looking at the scoring stats. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of odds. I don't personally talk about odds. Sometimes it's fun to look at and talk about that way. Okay. So what I want to do is first sort by game. And just to show you guys, game is strictly by tee time, starting hole and tee time. I only want to mention that because I'm going to hide these 2 columns, but as you can see, each game follows starting hole as well as tee time. So let me go ahead and hide these columns and really talk about we'll start with tee times and try to find favorite 6K golfers from tee times. Basically, when these are highlighted, I first look at scoring average, which I have all the stats in here. The best scoring average in this field is 69.13. The highest is 72.02. The field average is 70.35, and the tour average is 71.099. So obviously, the field average here is way better than the tour average. Looking at the tour average doesn't even really matter. But we do have a golfer that is above tour average, at least one. I don't know how many, but we have at least one. So what I did is I highlighted all the golfers that had a scoring average below the field average. Again, the field average was 70.35. And basically, I looked at everyone in the group. Is obviously that first group with Harry Higgs, Taylor Gooch, and I'm going to guess that's Jake Young Lee. All of those are these 3 golfers. I don't know what Lee's scoring average is, but the other 2 were not under the field average for scoring average. And therefore, none of their game numbers were highlighted. So as you can tell, Anyone that's over 70 or anyone that's under 70.35, I highlight. And the more golfers in the group that I highlight, the better color I choose. So red means just 1, yellow means 2, and then green will mean 3. And I can tell you right now, when I scroll through this, you're only going to see one group that has all green. That's your Xander, your Colin Morikawa, and your Victor Hovland group. Nobody else has more than 2. So when I look at my 6K golfers, I'm kind of looking to see which ones are highlighted because those are my scoring guys. I want to find scoring golfers. So let's go ahead and just copy down. I'm just going to go right here. I'm going to copy Brendan Steele. Every 6K golfer that I see, I'm just going to go ahead and highlight. Like anyone that is highlighted here. It's impressive. Matt Kuchar is 6,900. I think that's a perfect price tag for him, but it is crazy nonetheless. This might be a short list. And it is. It's a very short list. So we only have 3 golfers that are in the 6K range that have a scoring average below the field average. I posted on Twitter, or I tweeted, I should say. One other thing that I look at when it comes to trying to find a little bit of a trend are golfers who have similar things involved, which is price tag and finishing position like the week prior. So when I look at a lot of this, I see a lot of the same price tags. You're seeing a lot of your 6K golfers having a 20 to 40 finishing position the week before. Obviously, we didn't see that here in 2020, but we do see in 2019, 2018. And again, these 2 years are very similar to this current year. Both of the events, or I should say the event that preceded this one, was played in the same region, much like this year. We're in Vegas from last week and this week. These years they were in, somewhere in Asia. I don't remember what the CIMB is, but so when I look at that, the other thing that goes with me selecting my 6K golfers, so I'm going to keep what you see there already, but I'm going to go here and look at my last week golfers here. And how about this? I'm actually going to do this and then sort by this because this is going to be a lot simpler. So here we go. You have all your finishing positions right here. Again, that's obviously what the last week bucket stands for, which we really didn't get into, but I will shortly. I want to find somewhere between 2 and 3 golfers from this range, right? And I see a ton of 6K golfers. We already have Ryan Palmer. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead, highlight all of them, and put them one under this one. And we'll talk about them. Actually, why don't we just talk about them right now? So when I look at these golfers here, I really don't have a say one way or another. I'm going to go ahead and hide this because you guys already know what that is. I want to look at this. I really don't have a say one way or another. I will use the bucket system, which obviously, if you've been with me long enough, the lower the number you see in any of these columns, the better. So I would, our 1-3. How I would look at this is I might choose Cameron Smith or Ryan Palmer. I'm probably not going to play both of them. And if I were to go to 2018 and look at, can't really do it in 2018, but if I look at 2019 and look at what their finishing position was the year before, 2 of these golfers did not play, and one of them finished top 10 or top 20, really. So if I go here into 2021, I know you can't see. We'll open this back up. Cameron Smith and Ryan Palmer finished inside the top 20. So I think choosing one of them is going to be what we should do. So why don't we just go ahead and do that? So Ryan Palmer, Cameron Smith. Now Ryan Palmer was also in our scoring average analysis. So These two would be, to me, a great way to start with finding your 6K golfers. So I'm going to have a lot of these two golfers. Now, the other thing to go with this is, out of this range, I still want to find 2 to 3 golfers. I still want to find 1 to 2 more golfers. And really, I don't see, it's Russell Henley to me. It's Matt Kuchar. A lot of these guys are really good. I can look at a couple more pieces of information here. I really don't care about recent form. Nothing in here worries me. So that's why I'm going to hide this column once again. None of that information worries me. Matt Kuchar and Sebastian Munoz are playing together. That might not be a bad pairing to put together. So I guess let's go ahead and do that. So if I was to do this again, I might do something like that. And I could honestly add those guys right here with Cameron Smith. And I think that's a great strategy to employ. But either way, I'm going to actually remove that and say if we didn't go that route, because one of my favorite plays has to be Russell Henley. If I went with like Russell Henley here, I could certainly do it with Ryan Palmer as well. That's not a huge deal. Those would be good enough for me, like picking those two. But the thing is, Russell Henley is 7,100, which I don't think is going to hurt me. I actually do like that a little bit. But if I wanted to find an actual 6K golfer in this range, I'm probably going to look at the differential over here, because this is the low round in comparison to their scoring average. I would want a Tom Hoge, because his differential, he's very close to field average. But his low round is a 62, and his percentage of rounds under 70 isn't the greatest, but I still like that scoring potential of getting an 8.6, not 8.61, but shooting 62. Now, a lot of the golfers here, very similar to each other, but Cameron Smith, not really the lowest scorer, also not really the lowest scoring average golfer. Obviously, Ryan Palmer kind of does that. Matt Kuchar does it. Russell Henley. I think if we would actually go that way, that might not be terrible. So Russell Henley, let me add Matt Kuchar to this one. Not that one. Right here. So there we go. There are my 3 golfers that are in the 6K range that I like quite a bit. There's another piece to this kind of trend analysis. The other thing I noticed were golfers. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head why the next selection of golfers. I said one golfer out of this range is going to be is going to finish inside the top 10. And when I look at it, really the only thing that I do see that's very similar to that would just be like Ian Poulter in 2018. 2019, sure, I see it with Rafa at 7,900 and Ches Reavie at 7,000. And a couple guys here. Okay, so it still works out. All right. I was kind of doubting that. So anyways, I would also pick one golfer from here. I do think one golfer from here has the opportunity to finish inside the top 10. I don't know if I'm going to so much, declare it right now that someone will. I know I did it on Twitter, but I don't really like it. I'm going to go ahead and just choose someone. So I think either one of these guys would be fine, but really what I'd want to do instead of, say, I want to put Sergio in this lineup and Kevin Na in this one. So now I have my 3 6K golfers. Well, Russell Henley 7-1. So I have 2 6K golfers. And I have 2 6K golfers here, again, with Russell Henley. But as you can see, this leaves me quite a bit of salary left open. So what I can do is just easily place like Justin Thomas and see what I have left over. 10-1. So I could put like Matthew Wolff right there, which is amazing. If I were to go ahead and put Justin Thomas there, now Hideki Matsuyama is one of my favorite plays. I could go ahead and do that here, and it would leave me $9,400 left. Now I like Morikawa. I'm gonna have to change something here with Henley, which is totally fine. I could put like, okay, so I need 7,000 available. Why don't I put Matt Kuchar there and make that easy? So to me, it's going to be starting with finding my 6K golfers first and then filling it out going the opposite way. A lot of people like to just slam down their favorite golfer and build around that. But it kind of removes the creativity from lineups. And in all honesty, I've done it that way, and all it does is it gives me roadblocks that I have to somehow maneuver around. I think it'd be best to find your favorite 6K golfers and go from there. So that, I think, is going to be the strategy. The important strategy is finding the right combination of salary pieces, more so than stat pieces. But there really isn't much of a bucket system this week, primarily because we are at a different golf course. We also don't have a lot of stats, but if you wanted to know what the bucket scores were and what they indicate, for your last year bucket, the number one ranked bucket are golfers who finished 1st to 20th the year before, followed by golfers who did not play. So those two buckets alone make up 75% of golfers over the last 3 years who finish inside the top 10. And then it would be followed by 20 to 40, 40 to 60, 60 to 80. So finding golfers who either did not play last year or finished inside the top 20 is going to be pretty advantageous. And your min-max for that last year one bucket, it's 4 and 6. Obviously, that averages out to be 5. So what would that look like if I were to create a lineup that way? Basically, I'm going to sort this by the last year bucket, so you can see all the last year bucket ones. These are obviously the guys who finished 20th or better last year. Here, let me go ahead and do my salary first. So I need to find, 4 would be your minimum, which means like Ryan Palmer and Kevin Na are my 2 guys. And here you go. I already created one that has 4. Just by nature. Like, that was natural. That wasn't me trying to force that. But finding 4 golfers probably is going to be super advantageous. Now, the last year bucket has course history baked into it, and we don't have course history. So that's the only thing that I would have to say, put a little caution on, when we look at the last year bucket. Likewise, the last week bucket isn't looking at the same golf course the week before. But I actually do think this matches well with 2019 and 2018. So in 2020, obviously, this number grows exponentially large because of the 11 golfers who finished inside the top 10 didn't play the week before. But if I get rid of that, it's still a little bit more advantageous to not play the week before. But now finishing 1st to 20th the week before and also 20th to 40th get a boost up. So that's something to look into as well. So, I guess I would look more of your min maxes from here. So 1st to 20, it's somewhere between 1 and 5. 20 to 40 actually is pretty darn solid with 3. And those were the golfers that I showed you right here. That would be this pool right here, this pool of golfers. So these guys are your golfers who finished in that 20 to 40 range last week. And I think 2 to 3 of them will finish inside the top 10. So I would consider finding golfers here. Obviously, Ryan Palmer showed up for me here. Obviously, I can go with, Ryan Palmer, Cameron Smith. I can even do like a Matt Kuchar. Oh, I already did that right there. I'm sorry. We already have that right here. I mean, this is the best lineup in the world. Let's just face it. That's the best lineup in the world. If you want to duplicate it, go for it. But it's the best lineup in the world. I wouldn't be surprised if this one wins a lot of money. Like the most money. Anyway. So, and I gotta name this. I forgot. Okay. But either way, looking at the min maxes, obviously did not plays. You know, finding 2 of those. I think I actually naturally did that as well. With this lineup here. I don't remember what was Matsuyama's a 6. JT's a 1. Morikawa's a 6. Now was a 4. Kuchar would have played last week, but Cameron Smith didn't. So Cam Smith was a 1-1, right? Oh, he's a 1-3. Did he play? I'm befuddled. I didn't know Cameron Smith played last week. Obviously I did. What am I thinking? Just went unnoticed. Either way, maybe I find one more last week one. And perhaps it's in the 2-1s that did not play. I mean, I guess I could change out Hideki maybe. I mean, it's something for me to think about. Yeah, I would want to find a last week one to substitute one of these guys. It's not super imperative. It could have been Tom Hoagie maybe. It isn't. I'll think about it and I'll look into it. I mean, I like Bubba Watson as well, so I'll mess around when I create these lineups. But either way, the bucket system this week, probably not as important, but it's still good to see. And I'm going to still go by it. I will use the min max strategy when finding my players. Again, the min max would be what was the minimum you see in that bucket range, what's the maximum, and then working somewhere in between there. So that's what I'll end up doing. I don't really have anything else to talk about, really. I can show you who your best scorers are, which we kind of already did. Everyone was already highlighted, so I guess we don't have to do that either. I can just end the video right now. I think this was good enough. So with that, thank you for watching. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Hopefully you guys do well this week, and I'll see you for a review video on Sunday. All right, bye.